everyone. Thank you for joining us today once again on our fourth episode of our webinar series Into the Deep with PPC. We're excited as we've gone through these episodes. We're seeing more and more people join, and we're getting a lot of feedback as well on the series. So thank you for joining today. If this isn't your first one, then thank you for joining us in the previous episodes. If this is your first one, we also have the other episodes available for you to review. Today, I'm going to be joined by Nalina Prasad, who you can see on the screen. We're going to be talking about a particular subject that is extremely important for the marketing world right now. And let me share my desktop so you can see the presentation. So today we're going to be talking about SEO and how to leverage SEO into your digital marketing strategy, whether you are an agency selling SEO to other customers or whether you're an existing client. And we're going to talk about the legal industry. So you're a law firm and you want to leverage SEO as part of your digital marketing strategy. We're going to be covering some aspects of the product, how it can benefit you, why you should bring it on board, and how it connects with other channels. So like I mentioned, today I'm joined by Nalini from Blue Shark, fellow shark agency out there. Thank you, Nalini, for joining us. Maybe you can tell us a bit about yourself and what Blue Shark offers to their clients.
Yeah, awesome. So Blue Shark Digital is a full service digital marketing agency. We really focus on the SEO side of things, do a little bit of PPC, but SEO is our bread and butter. We actually were the in-house marketing team of a law firm here in DC, Maryland, and Virginia many years ago. Price Benowitz is the name of that firm. Seth Price is the managing partner who scaled that firm from 2 to 40 lawyers in about 10 years and said, well, shoot, if I can do this for my firm, I could probably do this for firms across the country. And so he took us 10 people, turned us into Blue Shark Digital. We're now about 50 folks who are all in-house here in DC. And we focus on those 4 fundamentals of technical, content, link building, local, all those fun things that Francisco's going to talk to you guys about today with that big overview of what SEO and PPC is. And we focus on legal. So we do this for just law firms as Blue Shark Digital.
Perfect. Thank you for the background and that summary. For anyone in the digital marketing industry, we know that legal is probably one, if not the biggest vertical out there. Right before starting the webinar, Nalini and I were discussing the industry, especially during COVID and after COVID. And it's one of the industries that we've seen grow the most, and we feel that it's going to continue to grow moving forward. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to focus on the legal industry today, because we believe that this is the one that has one of the biggest opportunities out there, especially if you're not currently leveraging SEO as part of the digital mix. So to walk you into the presentation, we're going to start by covering SEO as part of the digital marketing strategy, more broad view of what the product is, how it integrates as a multi-channel product with PPC and other products that you might be leveraging in your marketing strategy, how it can actually enhance your performance and your sales and actually getting more leads for your firm, how you can convert, whether if you're an agency and you want to convert your clients to SEO, or let's say you're a digital marketing director for a legal firm and you're watching us right now, how can you bring the SEO conversation into the table? So if you're not leveraging SEO right now for your firm and you want to talk to your executive team and prove some value, what you can bring to the table, what SEO is all about, and how you can connect it to the results that you want to achieve. And then I'll be covering as well a small topic that we feel has had a lot of great success for a lot of firms, but not all of them are actually leveraging it, which is business listings and taking advantage of that particular resource. And then Nalini is going to go deeper into the legal industry's go-to plan for SEO, the technical side, the best practices, the wins, why it's so important for lawyers to leverage SEO, some of the top legal areas where you can apply SEO. And then we're going to discuss a couple of case studies so you can see some of the success stories that we've seen by including SEO into a legal strategy. So to get started, as we all know, SEO is a key component of any digital marketing strategy, but it has become even more important when you're talking about a multi-channel integration with other products like PPC. When we put PPC and SEO into the mix together, we've seen significant increase in results all across the board. And you're also trying to capitalize on that search engine real estate. If you have a strong SEO strategy and you have a solid PPC strategy, you're going to dominate the search results. And if you have domination of the search results, the chances of you getting more leads and more customers is significantly higher. What's good about SEO and PPC and why this multi-channel approach makes sense is that they both have the same foundation in terms of strategy, and they also capitalize on the same resources at some points. And part of the discussion we were having before the webinar is, if you have a strong SEO strategy, this is directly going to benefit your PPC strategy. And also the other way around, if you have a solid PPC strategy, you're getting enough data that you can use to optimize your SEO. And at the end of the day, they work in perfect harmony, and there is a perfect connection there between the products that can help you get more results out of your strategy. So one key component that we keep in mind when we talk about multi-channel strategy and when we want to start the conversation about SEO and how it can bring performance into the mix is thinking about the buyer's funnel and how people actually purchase your services or go to you for products. If you think about the average consumer, especially nowadays, they go into a website, they look for information about your service. They'll likely go to a competitor's website and compare your product with the competitor. They'll leave. They'll probably come back in a week or 2 weeks. Sometimes they'll leave for a month. And then if you're top of mind and you're capturing all these touch points that they go through, you have more chances of converting them. PPC can capture a lot of these. You can do a lot of remarketing. You can do a lot of display ads. You can do a lot of video ads and everything to try to connect there. But there are a couple of touch points you can't capture, which are tied to organic traffic. Let's say you have a campaign running Monday to Saturday and from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And you've had someone visit your website through paid ads a couple of times. So they're interested in your brand and they're interested in your services. And then a Saturday night, they want to go back and look at your products, but they can't remember your brand name. So they type in the search engine one of the core products that they're looking for where you used to show up with ads. At that time, your ad is not going to be there. You're probably not running the campaign anymore. Maybe it's late at night. Someone else will be there. You know, your competitor will likely have an ad. And if they don't have an ad, the first thing that they're going to see is the organic results. So if you're not present in that particular organic result, this is a high intent lead, a prospect that is very interested in purchasing, contacting you and coming in and hiring your services that you might miss because that one touch point wasn't covered by a strategy. And that's where SEO comes into the mix. If you think of all the information that you get from PPC campaigns and other channels and the ability to leverage that data to put it into SEO, that's probably the biggest opportunity you have to capture a very specific audience. And I can talk from experience. This we were discussing right before the webinar as well, our own experience at White Shark Media. When we started leveraging SEO for our own strategy, our digital marketing strategy, we saw a huge increment in lead volume and overall engagement with our content. Basically, we relied heavily on PPC, and that's worked out great for us over the years. But as we started throwing data into our SEO strategy and trying to combine it and having them work together, we started getting significantly higher results. So for ourselves, it worked. And that's why we preach it as well, because we believe that the success is there if you have a way of integrating the product successfully, right? And that's really what the whole core idea is about integrating SEO into a multi-channel marketing strategy. When we talk about SEO itself and the product, there's a couple of things that you need to keep in mind. SEO is obviously trying to optimize for your organic presence and your organic results. It's tied to traffic, it's tied to generating results. But there are a couple of elements within the SEO strategy that work for improving your SEO, but also helping the overall digital experience. With SEO, you have a strong focus on your keyword strategy, and you base your content, your URLs, your headings, your image descriptions on your website around these keywords. These keywords are your core services that also have an impact on all your other channels. So the better you do with this keyword strategy on the SEO side, the more likely you are to get optimized ad copy for your PPC side. You're going to get better quality scores, you're going to get more engagement overall, etc. So all these elements within the SEO strategy not only benefit your existing website and traffic you're getting organically, but like we mentioned, they have a direct connection to everything else. For instance, if you're a local business and you want to get more traffic to your website, but you also want people to walk into your store, SEO is the perfect complement for any local strategy. In fact, if you have a local SEO strategy, you're more likely to get quicker results there than if you are a national client and you're looking for national results. So for local businesses, it's a given to have an SEO strategy, and we're going to talk about local listings. But this is a huge component if you want to capture a specific region, which is something very common for legal firms, right? The same goes with mobile. SEO is a key element for your mobile experience. Mobile is king. We know that mobile traffic has been going up year over year. Right now, we're about 75 or 80% of all search queries being done through mobile devices. So if your mobile device and your mobile experience is enhanced, you're going to lose out on traffic. And SEO is a key component of that enhancement and making sure that your mobile strategy is in place. Another key element nowadays, and we can all attest to this because we probably all follow the same pattern when we look for services, is reputation management. A lot of people don't see reputation management as part of an SEO strategy, but it is part of the strategy and it is a key element. a lot of us, and I would dare to say probably most of us, rely on reviews and what other people have to say about a product when we look for something. If you look at your own brand followed by the reviews keyword on a search engine, you're probably going to discover a lot of things that you haven't even found yourself if you're not monitoring them. And you're going to probably find a lot of opportunities for growth because you're seeing it from a prospect's perspective. And you're probably going to realize that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to improve the image and the branding that you have out there in terms of reviews. So reputation management is a key element that will help you not only obviously solidify your SEO strategy, but also just have a better overall approach of your brand and how you put your brand out there. The more reviews you have, the better reviews you have, the more likely you are to get more customers. If you've ever done an Amazon purchase, you can testify to this as well. You're likely going for the products with higher reviews. If you've ever hired a particular service, it is common that most people nowadays, they look for reviews because they have access to the information. And that's why it's so important. The same with on-page SEO. On-page SEO is a bit more technical. Aline is going to talk about this during her side of the presentation, but in most cases, this also has a direct relationship with the PPC side of the equation and with that integration we talk about with the multi-channel approach. Aline, one quick question now that we're covering this. In terms of multi-channel, you guys focus on SEO, but how often do you have customers come to you that already have a PPC strategy and they don't really have that connection between PPC and SEO? Is it a common scenario? For us, it's pretty common that we have clients that want a PPC campaign, but their SEO is not aligned with it. How does it look on your end?
Extremely common, right? So you have hammered it home that there's not just one funnel of revenue that you should be focused on. There's multiple channels that can bring in lead acquisition, right? And I would say more often than not, and it's a very small percentage, if anything, you have people doing PPC and not SEO. There's very few people in this world that are doing SEO and not PPC, right? So they start with their branding and then they can get into PPC because they understand it. It's a digital billboard, but they're like, I don't see the value in the SEO until they realize exactly what you said. It's when people have learned your brand, but they want to go back. You want to make sure that you're everywhere on that first page, right? So I see it overwhelmingly that they do have those PPC strategies that work really well, like you said.
Yeah, and one thing we see a lot as well is sometimes they're running both channels. So sometimes they have an SEO strategy and they have a PPC strategy, but they're not connected. So and maybe they're doing okay both, on their sides, but there's no synergy across them. And it's extremely important. If you have, and let's say you're a firm and you have someone managing your PPC and someone else managing your SEO, that's okay. They don't have to be under the same roof, but make sure that you're connecting and putting them together and they can share information to make sure that the strategy is in place.
Yeah, and even like more specifically to that, right? We work very well with other companies that do just the PPC in terms of what Francisco's talking about here, right? It really matters that your tracking is not separated, right? You want to be on the same page. You want to be using landing pages that are on the website, or at least that both of you are working together on so that it can be optimized for both SEO and PPC traffic generation, all that stuff. But really the tracking is very important for PPC and SEO to be on the same side and work together, not against one another, right?
Yeah, and it's I mean, I hate to say it, but it's a very common scenario. Like we see it a lot. And then we try to be proactive with SEO agencies that we work with to make sure that if we're working together on a client, that the strategy is in place and that we're both doing basically the work that we should be doing. And going into that and going into the added value of what this brings to the table is it's important to understand if you are, and again, let's think in the shoes of a digital marketing director that works at a law firm and is watching this webinar, and maybe you've been building a case to bring SEO into the table, but you've had a hard time justifying how to get the resources. It's important to understand the short-term added value that you can bring just by adding SEO into the mix, right? Brand awareness, it's fundamental. It's a key element of your brand, especially if you're talking about the local listings, the reputation, and combining that with organic traffic. It's basically covering the entire brand in the search engine. So that's a given. If you want to take care of your brand and you want to be present, then SEO is a must. Also, SEO for a lot of people, when they start implementing, becomes an extra revenue stream. So in a lot of cases, they're getting organic traffic, but they're not tracking. They don't really understand what it's bringing to the table. Once you start optimizing, you can quantify the results. And that's the thing about SEO. It's just like PPC. You know what's happening and you can quantify it. You have tangible KPIs that you can review. You're not throwing money in, hoping that it sticks. You can measure results. So if you want to optimize efficiency of budget usage, you can do it with with a particular tool like SEO, because you can measure where the money is going and what's coming back out of it. So this revenue that's coming from SEO, you can quantify it, and as you optimize it, it's going to become extra revenue that you weren't counting on, and probably you didn't even know that was coming from your organic efforts. The same in regards to conversion tracking, just like Nina was saying, the fact that you can track all conversions, you can track phone calls, you can track form fills, and you can tie that to your entire strategy, also gives you a better perspective of your buyer persona and the sales funnel that they're going through. In a lot of cases, we think, and this happens a lot with some of our customers, that people go to us because of our brand, and they have a branded PPC campaign, they get a lot of traffic, and they feel that their brand is the strongest asset and they capitalize on that. But when you go deeper into the data, you go into analytics, you look at the conversion paths, and you see all these touch points, you start to realize that they're getting to your brand because they found you somewhere else. They saw your product somewhere else, they saw your brand name, they remembered it, and eventually they went to your brand, right? But before getting there, they had to find you somehow. And in a lot of cases, organic plays a key role there. So a lot of the performance that is being is being held under the brand umbrella is coming from other sources, one of them being SEO. So once you go deep into the numbers and you see conversion paths, you understand how your average buyer persona behaves and how they purchase your product. And this also allows you to understand how to interact with them and obviously get better conversion rates. So this is fundamental if you're trying to capitalize on a very specific audience or a very specific niche, especially if you offer a very specific service. And also all the data that you're getting from your SEO efforts, not only in terms of search intent, but competitors, and what you can do with that data is what's going to drive you one step ahead of those other competitors. When we bring a client on board and we're doing PPC and they haven't done PPC before, the first thing we look at is organic traffic. We go into analytics, we look at the search terms that are generating traffic, and we look at the organic presence. And based on what happens organically, we set the PPC foundation, because the organic data is what tells us what people are looking for when they're finding us and what they're actually trying to get out of the process as well. So having all of this in mind is extremely important if you want to bring the SEO conversation into the table. And one element out of the SEO equation that we feel a lot of companies, a lot of legal firms are not capitalizing on, and it's a huge element that it's very simple to set up, it's completely free, it's something that's not going to take too much out of your time, is local listings. Local listings are some tools that Google and Microsoft offer for any local business, or any business for that matter. You don't have to be local, you can be a national business. And it allows you to control the story that's being told about your brand when someone looks for your brand online. So this is not going to show up in the actual search results. It shows to the right, but it's going to show your pictures. It's going to show your working hours, any promotion that you want to showcase, any information that you want to tell about your brand, you can control it and have it there. Why is this important? When someone goes in on a desktop browser, local listings and Google My Business or Bing Places captures almost half of the top of the fold. So the first thing they see, apart from some of the paid results and maybe some organic ones, is the local listing on the right. It takes half of the screen, and it's the one that's visually appealing. It has the pictures, it has the info, etc. If you've ever looked for a restaurant online because you want to go there and you found that you can't find the opening hours, you've probably, I get extremely frustrated when that happens. When I go in and I can't find the directions, or I can't find the opening hours to see if I can go because I don't know if it's open. It's extremely disappointing for me. With COVID, this was a huge product that we pushed with our clients, because this allowed them to push real-time notifications to their customers when they were looking for them in regards to opening hours, new regulations, safety measures. A lot of the restaurants that we work with, they use Google My Business to tell their customers that they weren't open for business, but that they would open for pickup, and they would add new pictures. And now that they reopen, they're adding pictures of the safety measures that they take in the local in that particular location, etc. So this is extremely important overall for brand purposes, but also to push the right information to your customers, especially nowadays when a lot of things are shifting in real time. The dynamic of local businesses is changing, especially if you used to rely on walk-ins. So having a tool like this one available and making use of it is extremely important. The reason we bring it up is, again, most of the clients that come to us, they don't have it set up. And if they have it set up, the setup is pretty basic. They don't have any pictures, they don't have any reviews, they're not really optimizing it for success. So this is one thing that you can cover that will guarantee that you get a better overall experience for your customer. You get more presence out there for the local market. So that wraps up the introduction on SEO and the value and the technical value and the multi-channel approach. And now we're going to move forward with Nalini. She's going to walk us through some of the technical aspects within the legal industry. They are the legal experts, so she's going to tell us what's worked for them, what they know is the right foundation for lawyers, and some of the things that you can capitalize on for the short term or for the long term as well. So Nalini, I'm going to give you access to the screen, so maybe you can drive us through the slides.
Yeah, awesome. And so I did mention that we kind of came out of a law firm ourselves. That has been where we've done our bread and butter of what we've looked into SEO. So Francisco gave you the great overview of all of those elements of what goes into PPC and SEO. I'm just going to take it as, yep, I think I should be good here. I'm not able to click it yet. Try one more thing. We did earlier there. I'll let you know when I can click through to it. I'm clicking here. But essentially, I'm going to take all of those elements that Francisco did just talk about, and we're going to apply them to legal, right? How does this function? You want me to just share my screen with it, or?
Yeah, I came back. Sorry, I think I had some technical difficulties, but if you share your screen, I think that's going to be safer.
Perfect. All right, we'll do that right now. With a lot of the elements that Francisco talked about, things are a little bit different for legal, right? Just simply because it's much more competitive. And so what I want to do is break it down by these different elements and why legal is so different. I've spoken at 30 legal conferences in 1 year. Then, COVID happened and everything went online. Since then, we have been back in person at conferences, which what I've seen, and this is what, Francisco and I was talking about before, is during COVID, a lot of people took the opportunity to say, hey, I'm at home. I can start my own firm. I've been thinking about it for 5-10 years now. I'm going to just jump in and do this, right? So what we found last year was that a bunch of firms were created. You just took a saturated market and made it even more saturated, right? In terms of your competition that's out there. So here is the presentation, and we'll kind of just take off from right where Francisco was. You can kind of see this now, correct?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. So essentially the things that I want to talk about is why is it important for lawyers in particular? And lawyers have been traditionally a very specific breed. There's been historical ways that we've gotten our cases. We go and we have a drink with a buddy. We make sure we're at these conferences and we are making referral friends. We're getting our name out there. We're branding, and we are making it a known thing that we are here to take cases by word of mouth, right? But the world is changing. And last year was one of the biggest moments where everyone realized, oh, shoot, I can't go make these relationships now because I literally cannot go see people. Everything's closed down. So what do I have to do? I have to work with my new ways of engaging with consumers, and that was the internet. So a lot of what I would think here for lawyers is, how do we step out of our comfort zone and how do we continue to grow, right? We know how to grow through referrals, but the internet is the place to be when you're ready to have that third bucket. It's not your only bucket of marketing. It's not the only thing you should focus on, like Francisco said. But if you want to grow, if you want more cases, if you want to increase your revenue, then having this as another opportunity is very important. And it doesn't mean you have to give up your traditional marketing, your branding. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and say, okay, well, I won't do PPC, I'll just do SEO. And Francisco, one of the questions that I get often, and I wonder how you would answer this, is, well, I hear you telling me that it's great to do both of these together, but my budget doesn't allow for it. So what should I do? Should I do PPC or SEO? And my answer is always, if you don't have the budget to do one well or both well, don't do it, because you're really just wasting money, right? So figure out a strategy and go with it. But what would your answer to that be?
Yeah, the thing about both PPC and SEO is that you can measure them. So if you want to talk about budget efficiency, let's measure it first, right? Let's see what you've done in the past and what could work. We are very transparent about setting expectations with our clients in terms of budget and what they can do. And depending on their industry, we go forward and say, hey, you know what, if your budget really is only $3,000, then this is how far it's going to get you. And the legal industry is a perfect example, right? If you're going to do personal injury in Los Angeles, where the CPC can be $400, $500,
yeah,
unless you have 50 or 60K to spend on paid, you should probably start with SEO, because the paid side is extremely competitive. If you're a local agency or a local legal firm, and it's more of or not necessarily one of the bigger cities and your services are not that competitive, you can give it a try. We have the tools to do the research and find out what would work for you, but we try to be realistic with the expectations of how far you can take the budget.
And I think it's also really important to think about what's the personality of your firm? What are your goals, right? Every different strategy is a fit for different types of firms, right? And different types of practice areas. So what legal industry, areas will actually benefit from SEO? And what we've seen historically is that it's going to be your B2C, your business to consumer practice areas, where someone is literally in need right now of a divorce lawyer, of a car accident lawyer, a DUI lawyer, right? They have an immediate need. They're going to go to Google. They don't know your name yet, but what they want to do is put in services that they need, and you want to show for that, right? So in order of the most sought out, I would say, and the most set up for success industries, I've listed them here. Personal injury, you've usually got the budget to actually make a difference. And you've got a bunch of different types of cases that you can actually optimize for. It's not just car accidents, but there's dog bites and there's slip and falls, and there's a lot that goes under that. Criminal also has a ton of them, DUI, some people niche down to, but there's all sorts of criminal cases out there that can be optimized for family, immigration, employment. I usually say that business, if you want to do, mergers, acquisitions, and helping LLCs get formed, may work if they are small niche businesses that don't really have a lot of connections on the ground. Because when you think about looking for business to business as your client, a lot of those folks already have connections. They have a lawyer on retainer, or they have a buddy that knows someone that they'll refer to. Why would you be spending time, resources, money on optimizing to be shown when people aren't going to search for it, right? So if you're looking for low-hanging fruit, you're looking to just get started with it, business to consumer is going to be your best bet in terms of optimizing and getting a good ROI there. So a couple of the things that I've seen across the board as what makes the legal industry so different from the home industry, the medical industry when you're doing SEO. It's these 3 items. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these 3 items and we're going to take them one at a time. And we're going to talk about what the issue is and what the solution is. And I want it to be a conversation. Feel free to, to interject with questions or write them down for the end. And Francisco, as you hear things or read things here, like absolutely chime in. But the 3 big items I see is 1, the competition, right? In legal, there are the big fish in the sea who just have a ton of budget to throw out there. And whether you're doing PPC or you're doing organic, when you have more money to spend, you have more resources, you're doing more content, you're doing more link building, right? You are outdoing your competitors. And at the end of the day, being able to rank is a rat race. It's who's doing the most numerically that Google can say, oh, you're the smartest person in the room. So that is one big thing that happens with legal, is that you have these giant firms. 2, distinguishing yourself. A lot of folks look at law firms and they say, well, you're just a law firm, right? You're a lawyer, you're all the same, or you're a personal injury firm, and that's the same as the guy down the street. How do you make yourself stand out? What kind of touch points can you have to actually make you have a different personality and be a person that a potential client likes, trusts, right, wants to work with? And so there's lots of ways through SEO, specifically organically, that you can do that. And the 3rd is targeting. And I think Francisco hit on this a little bit before, but it was that we don't necessarily look at the data and understand the folks that we are actually a good fit for, right? So a lot of law firms will figure out their personality by the demographics that want to work with them. Some firms are specific to Spanish speakers. Some divorce firms only do, the mother's side that they represent, or the father's side. But a lot of times just seeing what gravitates towards you and what kind of cases are coming to you and kind of people are hiring you can help you make that brand stronger, right? And help you learn how to target. And there's a lot of technology out there that people are not utilizing that can help with that. So with SEO, the 4 fundamentals Francisco touched on is making sure that when you want to take on law firms, because it is so competitive, you are focusing on all 4 of these, right? You can't just build content and expect to actually rank in the legal industry, especially in a more competitive market, because everyone is actually putting in effort, right? So when we talk about that rat race, if you're only doing one of the 4 items, Google's over here saying, well, your competitor's actually doing all 4 of them. So you have to do them all. You have to do them right. It's technical. It's making sure that the website has all of the coding and all that good stuff. It's content, making sure that you're putting up just one more page of content on the practice areas that you are focusing on. It's link building. It's making sure that more people out there are endorsing you than your competitors. And it's local, which is what Francisco gave that awesome tip, is foundational elements, business listings for your Google My Business, just keeping your Google My Business up to date, right? Making sure your brand is out there, and reviews and reputation management, of course, is very, very important for both the consumers and for the Google bot. So the monopoly issue. This one is kind of twofold. And I would say I'm going to take the organic first and then let Francisco kind of talk about the PPC. When it comes to a monopoly of having these bigger firms kind of dominate, Google is truly trying to make it an open market where they can have folks who are competing and they can make more than one person happy, because Google's a business, right? They don't want just money from one firm. They want every firm to be out there trying their best to do things across these 4 fundamentals to rank, right? So one of the things that came out recently, probably a year ago, is that Google made sure that there would only be 2 results per firm on page 1. So in the past, if I had looked up DC DUI lawyer, we have about 12 to 20 pages of DUI information on Price Benewitz's website. And number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, 4 different results on page 1 were all Price Benowitz, because it was the different elements of DUI pages that were coming up. Once this happened, it made sure that only 2 results would show, so that you could get more firms in there, and there was more opportunity. So this was great for firms to actually have a chance. And what it did for the firms who were dominating is say, well, shoot, I don't have to focus on DUI now. Let me put my resources into all these other practice areas, and I can do well across the board, right? So that's organic. But with PPC, I know a lot of people say, well, the highest bidder gets the spot, right? So is there ways where you can master the campaign, but the smaller fish does have a shot, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, money and budget is obviously a significant element of the paid efforts, and having a bigger budget does give you, let's say, a better foundation to target your particular keywords. But there's a lot of technical aspects in the background that will determine how far your money can go. And for instance, the brand approach is a very common example that we use. If you and I both bid for the same brand, but I own that brand, it's going to be cheaper for me to advertise for that brand, because Google determines that I'm the owner of the brand, and it gives me more authority over that particular brand. But obviously that requires some branding work on my website and making sure that my website is set up correctly. Where SEO comes into play, and this is how they connect with each other, is quality score is a big element of determining how much you pay for a keyword. So it basically determines how much the bid is going to be if you want to rank high. One of the key elements of the quality score is the relevance of your website versus your search terms and your ad copy. So if your website is optimized for SEO and your ad copy and keyword strategy is aligned with your website, your quality score is going to be high. So even if you have a lower budget, you should be getting lower CPCs than someone that might have a higher budget, but they don't really have an effective SEO strategy. So having the multi-channel approach, having an optimized strategy on your website, having a strong SEO foundation will benefit your PPC game, even if your budget isn't there. And that's kind of the key element here in the discussion.
And with that quality score, that's exactly where I talked about, working well together, having the PPC company and the SEO company work well, because we, for example, don't just create one page of PI, personal injury, but we'll have a car accident page, we'll have a bike accident page, right? We will further take that and we will make them city specific. So we'll have you'll have an LA page, and then you'll have a Sacramento page for car accidents. And when you guys are coming up with these really good ad copies that people want to click on, right? You can make it so specific to the landing page that it's going to the same city and practice area, and that helps with that quality score, right? So having it being optimized properly on your site in SEO is absolutely what he's talking about there, and why we work really well with other PPC companies.
We have, before you move forward, we have 2 questions that I think we can answer live.
Yeah, go for it.
Edward, what do you mean by the most reputable law firms that have the most reviews?
Yeah, so a lot of times, and I think that might have been something you said, Francisco, but I would say that when we're talking about reviews on Google My Business, a lot of what goes into figuring out who is going to rank is based on how many people have actually had a good interaction with you. How many people have put good reviews on your Google My Business so that Google can see, okay, you've had 45 people really enjoy working with you, specifically in car accidents, because they can read the words that are in those reviews, right? Whereas now you only have 20 people who have enjoyed working with you. When someone stands in your city and says, I need a car accident lawyer because my husband broke his neck, right? A long question, not saying your city name at all. Google's going to say, well, the one that has 45 great reviews is who's probably more suited to help this searcher. And so they're going to show above you. And that's where I would say that makes sense. If you have something to add there too with reputation and reviews and how that works.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what we meant when we were talking earlier about reputation management and how important it is, because it's not just about the user and what they see, but Google will also reward you if you have more reviews. So you're more likely to be found if the reviews are there. And once you're found, you're more likely to get the customer because you're being validated by other people as well. We have another question that came up before we move forward. This is in particular in regards to some of the things we're covering right now, which is, how about accountants, which is my niche market? Does it apply to the accountant market? Everything we're talking about right now.
And that's a great way to compare lawyers to accountants or a different vertical, right? Accountants naturally are not necessarily optimizing online. They are very heavy on word of mouth as well, which you probably are, or if you have a website, that puts you ahead of the game. And so when we go back to that concept of Google's looking for who's outdoing their competition, it does not take much for an accountant to establish themselves online because other folks are not doing it, right? So when it comes to how much content do you have to put up, how many links do you have to build, it's a lower threshold and it's a lower number usually across the board. The other thing is you can probably take folks from anywhere, right? Whereas lawyers have to focus on just their state because that's where they're barred. So you have much more opportunity to build out bigger campaigns and attract many more folks, but all of the targeting and the Google My Business, all of that applies to you 100%. These are the same elements that you want to put forth sweat equity into building yourself out online. Do you have something to add for accountants there, Francis?
No, in the PPC world, it works the same way. It's also a very competitive industry. The entire financial world is pretty competitive out there, but it shares a lot of similarities with lawyers in terms of understanding who your audience is and having the ability on both channels to segment the audience and be as specific as possible with who you want to target. It's what's going to make you or break you, especially with PPC where you're investing actual cash into the campaigns. If your targeting method is not as precise as it should be, you might be wasting some money into a potential audience that's not relevant for you. On the SEO side, it's about fine-tuning the content to make sure that it's resonating with the person that should be reading your content. So I think in both cases, both legal and accountants, audience is key, and how you fine-tune your content and your strategy towards that is what's going to make it for you. But most of the advice that we're sharing here today also applies for an industry or vertical like accountants, because it's competitive, they have high CPCs, and they're very particular about how they want to target their audience.
And who can actually work with you, right? So distinguishing yourself was that second hurdle, and there's a couple of different elements here. I'm happy to share these slides with you guys afterwards, so we're not going to go through one at a time, but the overall basics here is for content. That's one of the best ways to distinguish your firm from another firm, by making sure that you are niche, right? Maybe you handle a specific type of clientele or a specific practice area within the larger umbrella of PI or criminal, right? Make sure that you're branding yourself as such and become an authority in it. If you're going to choose to do blogs, or you're going to do posts or FAQ videos or something that makes you a thought leader, make sure that you are not setting the bar too high for yourself. Understand how busy you are. If you say you're going to do one blog post a month, you have to keep to it, or else what do? You become inconsistent and not reliable to a consumer, right? So try to create something that is yours, that's niche. We find that when it's something you actually enjoy writing about, it will get done. But also don't make a goal for yourself that's too lofty. Don't say you're going to do one every single week if you won't be able to actually keep that up for your consumers, right? Everything is built on trust. So doing this through link building. You can distinguish yourself really well here. And this is where I always say this is the most low-hanging fruit. This is very DIY. Go take advantage of all the relationships you've built already through your networking, through your community, and make sure that every one of those websites, places that you've spoken, places you've donated time or money to, places you sit on the board of, have your bio on their website and links back to your site. Google's able to then see that organization is connected to you, trusts you, and endorses you, right? So there's lots of low-hanging fruit here. If you're not doing this, I urge you 100%, do your business local citations. Also go out there and try to figure out how you can leverage everything you've done so far. Put it on your website. It's a touch point. Somebody may see your ad a couple times, Google you, get to your site, and then they're trying to figure out why should they hire you instead of anybody else, right? And if at the end of the day, they can see that you're involved with this school or this organization, and they're like, my kid goes there. I volunteered there last summer. That's that touch point that makes people say, I want to work with this person, or even just pick up the phone and call to talk to you, right? So putting these things out there, making sure your brand is there, leveraging anything that's new since COVID. So as people sat home, you opened your new businesses. This is one of the biggest things I've seen. So that a lot of people started podcasts. You guys have started video blogging. You've started writing more. You've done a lot more for yourself. Just make sure that you're leveraging this by putting it on different websites and getting that backlink. And then through Google My Business is the last way to distinguish yourself. It is a profile that is designed to put your brand out there and let people know who you are. This is an example of what we talked about a little bit earlier with reputation management. When people leave reviews last February, Google started reading the actual words in those reviews. And if a word was used more than 3 times and is a word that is highly searched, Google now has made it a filter on your Google My Business. You could click one of these filters and you could see the 5 people that talked about reckless driving. I don't care as much about that from the consumer side. From the SEO side, now if somebody stands in the city of Arlington, Virginia, and looks up something about reckless driving, you look pretty good as someone who's actually handled that for 5 different people, right? So making sure you are keeping your Google My Business updated, that every single opportunity Google gives you with these new features, you're filling them in, because Google is using all of this data to figure out who you are and why people like you. And so that last piece here is the targeting your audience, and that hard, everybody can be in a car accident. So if you're a personal injury lawyer and you're trying to optimize for that, or you're trying to work on a personal injury client's optimization, sometimes it can look difficult to figure out what age demographics is that. Whereas with wills, trust and estates, all right, that's older. With divorce, all right, people who are selling their homes, right? So sometimes it's a little trickier, but what you can do is make sure that you're using those tracking mechanisms that we talked about earlier, whether that's call rail, so that you can see the consumer's journey before they got on the phone with you. What kind of sites do they visit? What's their demographics, age, gender, race, city they live in, right? Where are the most people finding you? And make sure to optimize that way. So start to tailor your content, your link building projects, your community involvement towards that audience that actually is looking for you, right? And I think I'm going to end here with local, which is just a little case study. But one of the biggest things that Google cares about is the proximity to the searcher. They're getting more and more convenient for the searcher. So if I were to sit here and look up best pizza, Google knows where I'm sitting, and they're going to show me the 3 places that tell Google they make pizza, and they make that pizza right here in my area, right? That is extremely important for law firms, because as a law firm, there are specific little cities and neighborhoods that you want to target that are close to your office that might know your name already, right? If you're doing the PPC. So how do we make sure that we're in the right area with our office space? You need to know the different markets, right? So when you type in a city name, you'll see a red outline. That's what Google considers to be that area. You'll see smaller little cities outside of it that you can also optimize for. If there's a name on the map, whether it's a neighborhood or a real city, it is a Google market. This example shows you that somebody was in St. Louis, but St. Louis is very large. And so they were kind of further out here, if you can see my mouse, right? Their office was actually here with the St. Louis address. When people were standing in St. Louis proper, looking up immigration law and things that they do, they weren't ranking. And it simply was because there were firms that were actually physically located here in St. Louis that were closer to that searcher. So what we did was we already had great authority on their site and everything was going well. We created an office for them. They bought an office space closer to downtown. And you can see within weeks, just by putting a pin on the map there, they now had 2 St. Louis addresses. He was ranking much higher, even in the first office space and now in the second office space. So when you're thinking about getting back to a brick and mortar or expanding your offices, it's really important to think about what area do you want to target? Where is that trauma center where someone is walking outside on a smoke break and saying, you know, my husband just got in an accident, 18-wheeler, do I need a lawyer? Right? You want to be shown where that person's standing. So thinking about that is really important when you're trying to maximize everything, right? From A to B and get the most return for SEO.
Yes, no, I completely agree. And Alini, that actually ties into, we're going to cover 2 questions because we're running out of time. But one of the questions that we have, and this ties into exactly what you were talking about, is what can get me quicker results, PPC or SEO, which is a question we get a lot as well on our end. And I'm going to take the first answer here and say, well, that depends on the goals that you have. What PPC can give you is immediate rankings if you have the money. So if you want to show up first today or tomorrow, you'll likely be able to do so with a budget and the right strategy. That doesn't guarantee you're going to get results. So you have to make sure that the strategy that you have in place, even if you are doing it immediately, is making sense. With SEO, you could say that it usually takes a bit longer to set a strategy in stone. But Nalini just gave us a case study where in a matter of weeks, just by taking advantage of Google My Business, the location settings, and the resources behind the strategy, they were able to get immediate results. So it really depends on the particular goal that you have in mind and what you're going after. At the end of the day, you should always have a short-term and long-term strategy for your digital marketing efforts anyway. So I think you should always try to think in both terms, the short and the long. And the short, if you want to rank quicker, sure, you can pay an ad and be up there, and that can be successful. But also keep in mind that the work you're doing in the back end with SEO for a longer term will also get you the results that you need in the short and the long term as well.
And I will be the first one to say that SEO will take, I say 8 to 10 months. It's a long-term investment by far. And to be fair with that case study, right, the only reason that second one popped so quick was because of all the hard work that that website and that first Google My Business did. We connected the second Google My Business to their website that had a whole bunch of trust and authority with Google. So it definitely took time before that would happen. But what that does show is when you're ready to scale and you've done the hard work with SEO for that 8 to 10 months and your site is now loved by Google, you can expand and add these new locations. And that's where it doesn't take as much time. But that initial part is much longer return than PPC for sure.
Yeah, we actually just got a couple more. Let's see if we can cover all of them. The next one is, I have seen law firms that have fewer reviews still rank higher than law firms with lesser reviews. Why is it so?
Because it is all for fundamentals, right? So you can have a Google My Business and you can have a lot of great reviews, but what if your website is absolute crap and it doesn't take people to something that's relevant? What if you have 0 endorsements from the local community? Nobody there actually trusts you and you only have the reviews, right? What if you don't have content? So it is a big piece of the puzzle to say that reviews are important, but again, it is not the only. And so there's lots of different factors that go into it, and that's what's playing in. If you look at the people who are ranking higher and they have less reviews, 1, is their office physically located closer to the searcher? Probably, because of proximity. Google cares about that. Or 2, is their website a lot more authoritative?
Perfect. We have 2 more. One of them is, how can I identify which area is difficult to rank? Can you share any tool? For PPC, you have the keyword planner, which allows you to review the particular search terms that you want to use in the particular location that you're interested in, and that will give you the estimated CPC. So you can, let's say, play around with the map, and that will show you how expensive it is to show those particular terms if you want to show them through paid ads. For SEO, do you have any tool that you use, Eleni, or one that you
honestly
prefer?
For all of my strategies, I do manual searches. So I'll put the city name in a private tab, and I will look at how many Google My Businesses are there. Is it a cluster? How many reviews do they have? And I even go in to their site. I look at their content. I look at their backlinks on Ahrefs is the tool I use there. but you really want to look at everything all together. And a lot of times the manual search is the best way for organic to figure out what that competition looks like.
Perfect. And then we have the last question of the day. How does PPC's outlook look in the next 6 to 12 months with the addition of local service ads taking the top section in the SERP? How does that affect your SEO rankings as well? This is a beautiful question. In fact, Sean, I have a strong feeling we're going to be doing a full webinar on this, maybe even the next one. So stay tuned for that. And we're going to send you an invite for that one. But to give you a short answer right now, at least on the PPC side, PPC is a changing world. So it's hard to tell you what it's going to look like in 12 months. We can tell you some of the trends that we're seeing in regards to automation. So PPC is moving more towards automation, and that's going to take over a lot of things. But in regards to local service ads is a fairly new product. It's been around for 2 years. It's still not rolled out for every single industry or location out there. But more importantly, what we're seeing with our clients is some of them are getting some results, but there is no consistency in the results. With local service ads, you can't be more or less aggressive, and you can't really push anything outside of your basic setup and your reviews. So if you're expecting a particular number of leads per month, you can't fully rely on local service ads because there's no guarantee that you're going to get the same amount of traffic. With SEO and PPC, you have a good idea of what you can get, and you can see the trends. So what we recommend for our clients, depending on the industry, with legal, we've had mixed results, is if you have what it takes to certify and run local service ads, do it. It's a free setup. You can do it. It's a pay-per-lead model as well. So it doesn't hurt you in any way, but don't rely on it solely for your digital marketing strategy, because you're likely not going to get the results that you want just from that product alone. So it's a good complement for the PPC strategy, for the SEO strategy. Try it out if you can and get certified, but make sure that you're complementing that particular product with other products as well.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on LSAs too, and I've spoken on that a couple times. And one thing that we have seen is that because it's higher in the search results, it has taken a slight little bit away from your traditional PPC ads below it, but it has not changed your organic. And in fact, one of the most important things, as Francisco said, is you can't really tweak it, right? You can't change things. It's your basic settings. But what is it based on? It's based on your Google My Business. And one of the biggest factors that it shows is the number of years you've been in business and the number of reviews you have. So with very little things, reviews are going to be important. And with LSAs, because it is brand new, what we've seen, Seth likes to call it sprinkling the crack, is that it started last July. When people have gotten verified, even if there's someone in your market that's max bidding and they should be shown all the time, Google's making sure that people who just get verified actually get to show a little bit so that they get some cases, and they get you in there, they get you liking it, so you'll spend more money with them, right? Remember, they're a business. But this is a Nalini prediction, 100%, don't quote me on it, but I think that November and December, once it's been over a year and the majority of people who want to be involved in LSAs have been verified, Google will actually start to roll out their guidelines, and it will actually be the highest bidders are going to show. So it is not a long-term strategy to get cheap cases. It will eventually be highest bidder again, but reviews really matter there. And I think that paid ads are always going to be better because you can tweak them a little bit more. Even though you mentioned that it's becoming a little more automated, you still have more control over Google ads than you do LSAs.
Yeah, and I think that's the last question that we had, and I think that helps us wrap up with that particular topic of, again, thinking in terms of multi-channel, thinking in terms of how products complement each other. So if you have an SEO strategy in place, you have a PPC strategy in place, you can complement that with local service ads. And if you tie everything together, the chances of getting better results for your customers are significantly higher than if you don't have that synergy across all the products. So our take is, if you're not running SEO for your client or you're not running SEO for your firm, give it a shot. It gives you the opportunity to test things out and to put things out there that are going to get you more traffic, more revenue. And there's a lot of benefits and added value when you connect all these products together. We've covered some. There's so many things out there as well that we weren't able to cover today. You can go into Blue Shark website or Western Media website. Our blogs are filled with content around this particular topic, so you can find a lot of things there. But hopefully you got some good takeaways and you have some good information to go back to apply to your own website, your own campaigns, or your own clients if you're managing clients. Do you have anything to close it up, Nalini?
No, I think this was great. I really appreciate you having me on. I cannot stress enough that it's not a one-way street and one approach. It is a multi-level approach always with figuring out what works for your firm or whatever industry you're in.
Perfect. Yes, I completely agree. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. You will be getting the recording and the presentation afterwards. So we're going to send a follow-up email. You have it available. And you're going to have also Nalini's information available as well. In case you want to reach out, you're going to have my information available. We're going to be sending invitations for the next webinar as well. I think we're going to cover some of the questions that we got today in the next webinar, so stay tuned. But for now, thank you for joining us and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.